I recognize the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I rise today to offer an amendment that addresses a burdensome executive order that will have vast impacts on both our ocean and inland economies. Executive Order 13547 was signed in 2010 and requires various bureaucracies essentially zone the ocean and the sources thereof. This means that a drop of rain that falls on your house can be subject to this overreaching policy because that precipitation will ultimately wind up in the ocean. The new policy guidelines under this executive order that were finalized in April of this year have the potential to change permitting criteria and regulatory requirements for a large number of economic sectors, including maritime shipping and inland river transportation. The Army Corps of Engineers is participating in at least one ocean and marine spatial planning regional team requiring resources and staff time outside of their current statutory obligations and outside of their current budgetary authority. Since the Corps has not specifically asked for funds for the purpose of implementing Executive Order 13547, then they are raiding existing accounts to fund these activities, thus adding to the current project's backlog and misuse of taxpayer resources. Furthermore, the Senate WRRDA bill includes a funding stream for regional planning bodies pursuant to the administration's national ocean policy, thereby creating a permanent slush fund to bankroll implementation of their ocean zoning initiative that hasn't even received congressional authorization. My amendment would prohibit the programs or actions authorized under WRRDA from being used to further implement ocean zoning under the executive order, and further requires that the Secretary of the Army conduct and submit a study to Congress detailing all of the activities engaged in and resources expended relating to the executive order and to the national ocean policy, as well as relevant FY 2014 budget request. I want to thank the T&I committee for their hard work on the WRRDA bill. I look forward to voting for the WRRDA bill, and I'd urge approval of my amendment. I reserve the balance of my time. Mr. Chairman, thank you. You've heard a lot of hyperbole about my amendment. My amendment is a simple amendment, and that's to stop an unconstitutional executive order that has been considered 4 times by Congress, including the 110th Congress and 111th Congress, which were controlled by the other side. And during that point, during none of those Congresses was the law that is now part of this executive order ever approved by those Congresses. This is the bureaucracy in this chart that has been created unconstitutionally by this executive order. And Congress clearly doesn't intend to do that because it's studied this for 4 Congresses and elected not to. You also heard that there are stakeholders that don't support what I've proposed to do in this amendment. Unfortunately, that's not true either. We've got everybody from farmers to energy to commercial fisheries to recreational fishing interests that support this amendment and are fully on the side of it. They said that stakeholders came to Congress and said there were problems and that they wanted this executive order. That's not true, because we had a hearing in the 112th Congress, and the stakeholders, I specifically asked them, did any of you want the provisions that are included by this executive order to an entity? They said no, they didn't care for it. Also, I would like to say that this amendment has also passed 4 other times. In the 112th Congress, I added this amendment to the CJS appropriations bill for fiscal year 2013. It passed on a bipartisan basis of 246 to 174. I offered a similar amendment to the Offshore Energy and Jobs Act that passed by a bipartisan vote of 233 to 190. I also offered a related amendment to the FY 2014 Energy and Water Appropriations Bill that passed by voice vote. And so this is a common sense amendment. We're just saying if Congress hasn't authorized this activity, A, and B, if Congress hasn't appropriated any money for this activity, then this activity shouldn't take place. That's what the Constitution calls for. That's what this amendment does. And with that, I'd urge approval of the amendment and approval of the underlying bill. Thank you, and I yield back.